But you have this idea in your mind that he will hear you more when you call him Yeshua, as opposed to those who call him Jesus. That's the only thing that I can see why you would do that. The only other reason, when someone blesses me in the name of Yeshua, or when I hear them see something on Facebook where they say Yeshua this and Yeshua that, the only other thing that I can think of is that you are walking in the direction of Hebrew roots, sacred name theology. And I'm going to try to stop you from doing it. I'm going to try to stop you from doing it, if you'll let me.
The Old Hebrew alphabet, also called the Paleo-Hebrew, was adopted by the Greeks around the 12th century BC. While Hebrew is written from right to left, Greek was written from left to right. For this reason, the letters were reversed in the Greek alphabet. Here we see the first 5 letters of the Old Hebrew alphabet: the Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and He. But when reversed, we see the ancient Greek alphabet: the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon. Note that the original Hebrew names of these letters were retained for the Greek alphabet. The Aleph becomes the Alpha, the Bet becomes the Beta, the Gimel becomes the Gamma, the Dalet becomes the Delta, and the only exception is the He becomes in Greek Epsilon, which means plain E. Over the centuries, these ancient Greek letters evolved into their modern Greek forms. Our English alphabet is Roman, and because the Romans adopted the Greek alphabet, we're able to see our own modern English alphabet in these ancient Hebrew turned Greek letters: the A, B, C, D, and E. As previously mentioned, the Old Hebrew alphabet was used by all Semitic peoples, including the Arameans, also called the Chaldeans, but evolved independently from the Hebrew. By the 5th century BC, the time of the Israelites' captivity in Aramea, also called Babylon, it no longer resembled the Old Hebrew it came from, and it is this Aramaic square script that Israel adopted during their captivity. With the Aramaic square alphabet in use by the Israelites, it continued to evolve into the modern Hebrew letters that we're familiar with today. By the end of the 19th century, the translation of the Semitic alphabet was well established. The only mystery was the origin of this alphabet, as mentioned in the 1922 The New Learned History for Ready Reference, Reading and Research, in its entry for the letter A. A, the initial letter of the English and almost all other alphabets. The Phoenicians called the letter Aleph, seemingly because of the resemblance of the character to the head of an ox, although nothing is known with any degree of certainty concerning the ultimate origin of this letter.
Because I've taken a look down this road. I know where it's going. I get it now. I'm going to fill myself with more information, but as far as the end game, I got it. And you've been set up. You have been set up to believe something that's not true. It's not biblical. And so I'm not trying to be mean. I love you, and I want you to love me back. for telling you something that's true. And I'm not giving you anything but Scripture. My Scripture tells me that I call him Jesus, and that's what I call him. And again, I don't think it's a sin for you to say Yeshua. I'm just asking why you do. And if you believe that it curries more favor on you by Jesus, when you call him that over those who call him Jesus, that is unscriptural, and your motives are wrong. The Bible said, blessed are the pure in heart. What are your motives? That's all I'm asking you to do is judge yourself. Judge yourself and ask the question, why am I calling him this when my Bible, that I believe every word of, when my Bible doesn't say it, doesn't have it in there? Why do I call him this? I want you to ask yourself and be honest. You can lie to yourself. I've done it. I've lied to myself. I just want you to be honest. Now, the reason why I brought up the weapons and the 4. So I want you to remember this number 4. And I'm going to show you. So this is a preview now. You remember Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl was, I used to call him the dead god. I don't call it that anymore. I call it what I've been reading, and that is the dying god. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. The dying god is the God who is perpetually dying over and 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 over again. He's not just dead. He is perpetually dying. So what are you talking about? Mankind as a whole is perpetually dying. Every minute, I don't know how many people in this world every minute die. Maybe if you, somebody on Skype or the Facebook group, give me a number. You're going to Google it. How many people die per minute? Every minute, people are dying all over this world. And every human being has what the devil put into Eve, his words of death. And they were passed on to us. And every time a human being dies, that God, that no good thing that Paul said was in his flesh, just keeps dying. And so you study the myths, just type in dying God. You'll see Osiris, Bacchus, Dionysus, Mithras, who is Mithrandir in the Lord of the Rings, and all of these others. He's the dying God. So Quetzalcoatl was the Mexican version of this. He is the serpent god, the fiery flying serpent. And according to their legend, he was crucified and he is dying on an X-shaped figure, like a cross. Well, we all know what that is. That is the earth, air, fire, and water. That's the elements. And I want you to notice something about earth, air, fire, and water. Earth, air, fire, and water are opposites. Notice on the left hand, you have, on the left-hand top of the screen, you have fire. And on the right lower part of the screen, you have water. Notice that the triangle points up and the triangle points down. They're opposites. And then obverse from that, you have up on the upper right, you have air, and it's pointing up. And then you have earth pointing down. They too are opposites. Okay? They're opposites. What do they represent? Here's what they represent. They represent the 4 base pairs that are opposites. Guanine and cytosine are opposites. That would be earth and air, let's say. Fire and water would be adenine and thiamine. So the 4 here in this particular case, or let's see this cross here that Quetzalcoatl is dying on, is none other than your chromosomes, where your DNA is, your X chromosome. That's the 4 things: earth, air, fire, and water, adenine, guanine, cytosine, thiamine. Now I want you to notice that Quetzalcoatl is the dying God who is on the cross. Here is this emblem here. This is actually from a book called The Crucifix that spoke to St. Francis. Are you getting where I'm going here? The miracle that is ascribed to St. Francis is that he went into a Catholic chapel to pray, and when he got in there, a crucifix, now I want you to get this. The crucifix is an idol shepherd, I-D-O-L shepherd, and it's an image of the beast that the false prophet causes to speak. Revelation 13. Because when St. Francis of Assisi got into this chapel, this idol shepherd, that's the dying God on the cross, the God of the sacrifice of the Mass, who is perpetually being sacrificed on a cross for your sins. The idol shepherd, the statue, the image of the beast, spoke to St. Francis of Assisi and told him that the church was in disrepair, that it was all broken down and he needed to fix it. So now we have the New World Pope. And the New World Pope deliberately, he has a right to choose his name. No other pope, number one, was a Jesuit. Number two, no other pope was from the New World. Number three, no other pope ever referred to themselves as Pope Francis, after St. Francis, whose sole legacy is that the dying God on the X chromosome, the idol shepherd, spoke to him, just like in Revelation 13. Wow. Now, here's where I'm going with this. This is big, all right? This is very, very large, big. I want this image here of the dying God is the image, is an image of the beast. And it's seen, and there's just more than one image of the dying God, like Quetzalcoatl, that has to do with a cross or a cross-shaped idea. Albert Pike, if I were to run out here and get my copy of it, and I showed it in the video, Albert Pike wrote a whole section in Morals and Dogma on this, on the symbol of the cross in its various forms, whether it's the swastika or the tau, okay, like this, or the letter X, or any other of those symbols. The swastika, of course, Adolf Hitler used because he believed in the evolution of mankind, that man was going to become gods, and that's why he used that symbol. It's the same idea. And I'm going to give you this too before I move on. I'm going to get into the Hebrew roots thing here in a minute. Your jaw's going to drop off of your face when you see what I'm going to show you. But I want you to follow me on this, and I explain it more in detail in the video. The dying God that exists in every human, that little piece of the dying God, he cannot be resurrected because he's perpetually dying. Every time a human being dies, he dies with it. But then there's more human beings, and they keep dying and keep dying. And so here's the thing. The dying God, which is the Antichrist, another Jesus, can only be resurrected if everybody stops dying. What did the serpent promise Eve in the garden? You shall not surely die, but you shall be as gods who don't die. Gods are immortal. What did Ray Kurzweil promise? Time magazine, 2045. The year that man becomes immortal. He no longer dies. We're looking at genetic ways. We're looking at technological ways, altering man's DNA somehow, some way. We're trying to teach ourselves, and I believe spirits are involved in indoctrinating and teaching the minds of these physicists and these biologists. Francis Crick admitted that he was using small amounts of LSD so that he could visualize and imagine what the double helix of DNA looked like. Where was he getting his inspiration from? The spirits So I believe that the physicists, the biologists, the people who are working on the Large Hadron Collider, looking for the Higgs boson, I don't quite understand that, but anyway, but I do know that they have a statue of the beast sitting out in front of their building. There's a statue of Shiva with its 8 arms sitting out there, or is it 6 arms and 2? I don't know. Anyway, Shiva's the beast, the dying god who wants to be resurrected. Somehow, some way, the Higgs boson has something to do with that. These scientists are being inspired by principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, and spiritual wickedness. They have familiar spirits telling them, giving them the inspirations of what they're supposed to be doing. Why? Because the end game is to keep every human being alive on the planet long enough for the beast to be resurrected. This is what I see from the scriptures. Is there a place in scriptures that actually says that there will be a time when no human being will die? Go find it. Revelation 9. The 5th trumpet sounds. The scorpions come out. They sting mankind. And for 5 months, man wants to die and can't. Nobody dies for 5 months. Wow. Do you know what the gestation period of a goat is? It's the same amount as the gestation period of a sheep. And in Matthew 25, Jesus comes to do one thing: separate the sheep from the Baphomet goats. Just like the wheat and the tares. They're going to bind up the tares and separate them out from the wheat. And the tares, they get burned in the fire. Do you know how long the gestation period of goats and sheep is? 5 months. Now, take a good look at this, all right? Take a good look at that. That is the dying God in your chromosome. We just went through the Catholic thing of Lent for 46 days. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get the whole 46-day thing with Lent and them putting an ash X on your forehead as a mark? That's the reference to the dying God in your DNA. Now get ready for this one. A few months ago, when I first tore into the Hebrew Roots Sacred Name movement, it's because Jim Staley called here and provoked me. He called here, and I'm not returning his call. I'm not going to talk to the man. Don't have to. I'm going to warn against him. I'm going to warn against him and everybody else who's trying to drag you under the law. But he provoked me, and I went to study further what he said, if you remember that. And I mentioned here the fact that Staley and 119 Ministries and Rude and Monte Judah and all these other guys, their whole one of the foundations of their religion is that they keep saying Jesus would have spoken Hebrew, the disciples would have spoken Hebrew, they would have written it in Hebrew, they would have Hebrew this, and they would have Hebrewed that. The problem exists for them is that there is no evidence that any of it was Hebrew. And so what we have is that the entire record of the New Testament is in Greek. Well, they say that's because the Hebrew works were destroyed by the pagan Greeks who wanted to alter the doctrines. And so I brought up the question, if Jesus was all about being a Hebrew and wanted everybody to be a Hebrew, and if we're to be grafted in on the vine of the Hebrew, why then did Jesus identify himself in Revelation 1 not as the Aleph Tav, the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, but as the Alpha and the Omega, the first and last letter of the Greek alphabet? Why did he do that? I am the Alpha and the Omega. You know what he was doing? He was telling the Gentiles, I'm your Savior. I said to my people I would not speak Hebrew to them anymore. With stammering lips and another tongue will I speak to this people. And God meant what he said. He wasn't going to speak Hebrew anymore. So he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. A while later, 119 Ministries, I don't know if they heard what I said or not. I don't know. But all of a sudden now they come out with got a new revelation here. Got a new revelation from God. And it's real funny. And I wrote down what he said so I wouldn't get it wrong, so I couldn't be accused of, well, I never said that. Well, yeah, I wrote it down. You said it. He said, the speaker of 119 Ministries said that Jesus was a Hebrew and John was a Hebrew. So what Jesus would have said, that statement just cracks me up. It makes me laugh every time. I just want to go, what he would have said. That sounds like a kid who got caught saying a cuss word, and then he's in front of his mom and dad going, I didn't, what I would have said was, is what it sounds like. So they're saying what Jesus would have said, had it been preserved, he would have said, I am the Aleph and the Tav. But that's not what it says in our Bible. It's not what it says in the Greek Bible. It's not what it says in the English Bible. It's not what it says. That's not even what it says in the Jehovah's Witness Bible. I am the Alpha and the Omega. That's what he said. No. He really would have said, he was saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav. And so they put out a video called The Mystery of the Aleph Tav. It's God, Jesus, Yeshua's signature, bringing you back under the Torah, telling you got to keep the Torah, got to be like the Hebrews, got to be like the Jewish rabbis. So I saw this. There's a book out there. Somebody actually in an email recommended it to me. And to the person who recommended it, I'm not trying to be mean here. There is no way in the world that I'm going to endorse that book. It's called The Hebrew Yeshua versus now the Greek Jesus. Versus the Greek Jesus. You can understand where that's going without reading it. But they promote the idea of the Aleph and the Tav that Jesus is rather than the Alpha and the Omega. Now, here's what's significant about this. You remember when I was talking about Staley and his doctrine, and I was reading from, I still have it somewhere in here, in notes somewhere. I was reading from Staley's article that he wrote out of his own mouth about, that's not it. I've got it in here somewhere. Here he is. Staley's article, What is the Real Name of God? And in this article, he talks about how the Hebrew letters all have their own meaning. The Hebrew language is an ancient language that first started in pictograph form, meaning that originally the words were pictures that eventually evolved into letters. And so in Hebrew thought, a name is not merely a random combination of sounds created for arbitrary designation. But the teaching is that since each individual Hebrew letter is a picture of something, that when you see a name in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, you don't just read the name and that's what it means. It has a secret hidden meaning based upon what the Hebrew letters look like. And I'm going to show you what I did. And it just kind of came to me, okay? I've said, I'm going to show you now in the Bible where it's talked about that the Hebrew letters have a definition. And I went, doesn't exist. In the authoritative guidebook that God has given a record to all mankind, did you know that there's not one word in 1,189 chapters, 929 chapters of the Old Testament? There's not a word in there about Hebrew letters having a picture symbolic meaning. Not once. Even in Psalm 119, which we know was inspired by God, and each segment of Psalm 119 in verses of 8, each segment begins with the alphabetical Hebrew letter, Aleph, Beth, Daleth, Gimel, and so on, all the way down to Tav. There are 22 sections in Psalm 119. And did you know that you can read that 48 times in a row and never find out that the Hebrew letters were pictographs and they had their own secret meaning? Even in the book of Lamentations, in the original Hebrew, the book of Lamentations has 5 chapters. The first chapter has 22 verses, and the beginning of every verse in Hebrew, the beginning word of every verse in chapter 1, the first letter of the first verse starts out with Aleph. The first letter of the second verse is Beth. The third letter is Daleth, and then Gimel, and so on. And then in chapter 3 of Lamentations, you have it in segments of 3. The first 3 verses, the first letter starts out with A. The next 3 verses starts out with Beth, and then so on. So there's 66 verses in chapter 3, and then it goes back to 22 and 22 in verses in chapters 4 and 5. And if you read those, not one word, not even a clue that the Hebrew letters themselves have a hidden meaning behind them. It's not there. Where did that come from? Who designed that? Who made that up? Let me show you something. You know Joseph Prince, that Japanese guy that has a deep voice and he talks about all the great things that God is showing him. He's even fallen for this. He has fallen for, if he wasn't fallen already, he's fallen for the Aleph Tav Jesus doctrine. And he's got a book called Aleph Tav Jesus, I can't even read it, something in the Bible, his signature in the Bible. I want you to look at that picture next to that, the Aleph Tav. This is by Brad Scott. What does that look like to you? What does that look like to you? I'm going to show you what they said. This is, I'm telling you, it's a setup, everybody. It's a setup. You fell for this, and you were set up. You see, they call the Aleph Tav God's mark. And here's what it says. The ancient Hebrew pictograph for the letter Aleph is an ox head. Are you kidding me? And they say, that's God. The ox, the bull, the golden calf, the beast. That's who their God is, according to their pictograph. The ancient Hebrew pictograph for the letter Aleph is an ox head, meaning God, as in the Lord is my strength. The pictograph for the letter Tav is 2 cross sticks, meaning a mark or a covenant. Therefore, when Jesus says, I am the Aleph and the Tav, which he did not say. He did not say that. Therefore, when Jesus says, I am the Aleph and the Tav, what he would have been saying is, he is the mark of God. And here's what it says. The ancient Hebrew pictograph for the letter Aleph is an ox head. Are you kidding me? And they say that's God. I want to tell you what you've done. You've carved out an image of God and or Jesus that does not match the image drawn out for you in the pages of the Scriptures. The ox, the bull, the golden calf, the beast. That's who their God is, according to their pictograph. The ancient Hebrew pictograph for the letter Aleph is an ox head, meaning God, as in the Lord is my strength. The pictograph for the letter Tav is two cross sticks, meaning a mark or a covenant. Therefore, when Jesus says, I am the Aleph and the Tav, what he would have been saying is, he is the mark of God. An ox in a chromosome.
Two on each side that come together, and what's in the dead center of that? The Holy of Holies, the Shekinah Kavod, the glory of God.
The Shekinah is not from God. The Shekinah is from Shakan, which means to dwell, from whence comes Mishkan, the tabernacle. We're dealing with Hebrew words. Shekinah, the word Shekinah comes from Shakan, which means to dwell. So far, he's got it right. What you didn't tell him was Hebrew words are masculine and feminine. Some are neutral. But Shakan, which is actually used in the Hebrew Old Testament, Shakan is masculine because God is a guy. Shekinah is a girl. It's feminine. That's not God.
two on each side that come together, and what's in the dead center of that? The Holy of Holies. does the prophet Jim say? Two on each side that come together, and what's in the dead center of that? The Holy of Holies, the Shekinah Kavod, the glory of God.
Lest ye corrupt yourselves, and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth,